Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's a wonderful Sunday morning here, and getting ready to do some more family time. Surprise, surprise! But I did get away for a little bit yesterday. We did a little bit of birthday celebration, so that was a lot of fun. And basically after that, after the birthday celebration, came back. It rained all day, cats and dogs, and and when I got back, actually, I had a couple people I was talking to about real estate yesterday. Some people were asking me, and I guess I didn't realize it, but I've never shared the story of how I actually got into real estate, because people are like, "Well, I see you're doing all this different stuff in real estate, but how did you actually get started?" And maybe I've never really shared that. So I thought I would do that here today. And then I'm going to share it a little bit later as well. Never really shared that. So I thought I would do that here today. And then I'm going to share it a little bit later as well. But it's really interesting, right? Because I guess when I look back around how I actually got it started in real estate, it's, I don't know, I guess everybody has their kind of their own story, but I am the product of a very humble middle-class family, right? Both of my parents, neither of the two of them went to college or finished college. What they did do is they worked really, really hard so that my brother and sister and I could be in really good areas and access to school, right? So when my parents were working all day and all night, and my brother and sister and I were in school or after school activities and things like that, I mean, the one thing that my parents always told us was make sure that you get a quality education, go to school, get a good job, so you don't have to do the same things that we are doing, right? And so I listened to them a lot and took everything that they said to heart, felt all the love that they gave me, my brother and sister, and eventually, did exactly what they said. I went to college. I got 2 different degrees. I even had a chance to work summer internships. And so I was definitely on the track to to go out, get a good job, get great grades, get a good job, and climb the corporate ladder. And that is really what I was on my way doing, even when I got to Europe, right? And so I got to a certain point, and I realized I found myself in this very white collar world. So I was in a middle management position, multinational companies all the time. I'd moved into the IT sector, so I was working in hardware, started working in software, and it was right around 2008, because I'd just gotten engaged, and my wife and I were we were going to get married, and at the same time I was changing my role at the company that I worked for, and so like I had all these different elements of change that were happening in my life, and I just remember that a couple different things happened, right? So I'd come off of another. It was a trip, so I was responsible for sales in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and specifically with 2 markets. And so I just was responsible for. I'd come back from a trip from, I think it was London or Johannesburg the night before. And so I'd been working all day, like I'd been in my suit all day. So the suit was like, it was a suit that had been worn all day, right? So, I mean, it was kind of crinkled, and there was, I guess, kind of sweaty and stuff like that. And so I'd gotten back home. I'd gotten off the flight. I got back to Barcelona and was just completely exhausted, but got in the taxi, was on the phone most of the time, making sure that I got my last minute calls in before I got to the house. And then once I got to the house, I remember getting in the elevator, like standing there, the elevator's going up and up and up and up. And I just get to the place and was completely exhausted. Like I saw my girlfriend at the time, gave her a kiss. I think we ended up having a bite to eat. And then we had to talk about the wedding reception, right? Or the wedding planning and stuff like that. And so I remember just talking to a point where I was just completely exhausted, right? And ended up falling asleep, went to go to sleep. But before I went to bed that night, I was already thinking about the business meetings that I had the very next day, right? Because I was back in Barcelona. So go to bed completely exhausted, stretched out. And yeah, and then I got up the very next morning. Of course, I grabbed my phone. I'm looking at my phone, how many emails came in, and I see those emails as they come in, and I'm already thinking as I'm brushing my teeth on my way into the office, and I was trying to beat my boss, right, to be the first one there in the office. And as I got to the office, I wasn't the first one there, so my boss had beaten me already, and I was kind of like, dog it, But I had to go and sit down. I did a couple of emails because I wanted to get those out because I already had those things on my mind from the morning. And once I got a couple of emails out, got ready for my first call, I went to go grab a cup of coffee, started talking to some people, asking them about their day, really small talk, chit chat. And before I knew it, like I had to run to the phone to get on my first conference call. So I go and I get on my conference call. Of course, I put on my earphones. And as I'm putting on my earphones, it's the typical start of any corporate business meeting, right? That people are dialing in. Where are you in from? I'm in this city. I'm in that city. People are talking. They're muting over one another. One thing led to the next. We watched a whole bunch of slides. I could tell that many people were multitasking because they had to ask 4 or 5 times their name and all that. I mean, it was just like you get this startup for the day, and then all of a sudden it was time to go. So then I had a business meeting with my team. So I walked down the hall. I had my laptop under my hand and under my arm, and we're getting ready to go out because my team was ready. I get there. I'm talking to my team. We go through the business meeting, show a bunch of PowerPoint slides and Excel spreadsheets, and it was time to run to another meeting. But this time it was a meeting with my boss. And so I'm running down the hall because I didn't want to be late. I've got my laptop in one hand. I've got my mobile phone. I'm still checking messages. And, I walk into the door. I get there a few minutes early, and it's my turn to walk into his office. So I walk in the office, and I remember just like my heart's constantly running. My brain's thinking about 5 million different things. And I walked into my boss's office on the 12th floor of the building that we're in. And I remember just walking in, and he's completely chilled out, just relaxed. And I'm like, wow, because I was transferring from my current role, getting ready to move into another role. I wanted to make sure everything was fine. And my boss was completely just chilled out, right? And we go through our business meeting, and I survived the business meeting. So I was happy about that. And then after the business meeting happened, like I just remember talking to my boss about my stock, my portfolio had kind of gone down. He was asking me about the wedding plans, and I was telling him all the different things that were happening, right? The wedding plans were going in the right direction. Portfolio was not doing really well. And I just remember like this was the first time like I'd ever really thought about real estate, because I remember my boss just being completely chill, and he's talking to me about the fact that like his retirement plan was actually his rental properties. And I was like, well, what? They're rental properties? And so he tells me about his rental properties, and I'm thinking to myself, well, this guy is definitely earning well into the 6 figures, probably over 200,000 euros a year. And it's just my assumption, right? I don't know that, but I know what I was making, so I know pretty much what he should have been doing as well. And when that happened, I was like, well, kind of tell me a little bit more about it. And he started talking to me about this whole concept of arbitrage. And if you don't know what arbitrage is, it's kind of like if you go to a market and you're going to the exact same 2 markets and they both sell apples. One sells them at $1 and the other sells them at $1.50. You buy them at $1 and you sell them at $1.50. And so you make the 50 cents in the middle. That's what arbitrage is. But he started telling me about his cash flowing real estate. He's a Scottish guy, and his real estate was back in Scotland, but he was living in Barcelona. And I thought to myself, this could be pretty interesting. So he goes through and he tells me a whole bunch of different things. But I was thinking in my mind, like right now, I was also at a point in my life where I wanted to go out. I wanted to make more money because I knew that I wanted to keep going up the ladder, right? And that's what I was supposed to be doing and getting more money so that I could go out and have nice dinners and buy nice watches. And also like I wanted to start being able to pay for things, which was part of my wedding on one hand side. And then on the other side, I was also like, I was kind of scared, right? Because I was getting ready to get married. I was getting ready to kind of go from boyfriend to head of household, like really responsibility. So I was kind of panicked about that. And then I thought, well, I'm going to be a father pretty soon. And so that's going to be a lot of extra responsibility. Aside from being able to provide for my family, am I also going to be able to be around when my kids are growing up, right? Or am I just going to be another dad who's never there? And so I was really concerned about that. And I was nervous about it. And I had all this kind of stuff going in my mind. And then I guess when I started thinking about it, it was, let's see, if I didn't also like go keep moving up the ladder, would I be in a position where I wasted all this time in my life and I didn't keep going up the ladder, or I got, let's say, fired from the job or something like that? So Um, Afterwards, I also started realizing that everything that I was doing was completely tied to, in terms of my financial well-being, was tied to either a job, which I didn't control or own. I wasn't responsible for my role. And everything that I was doing in the market, which was outside of my control as well. Like, so these two things it was really kind of concerning for me, like that my financial life was dependent on things that I couldn't control at all. And that's kind of when I thought to myself, now my boss is here. He's telling me about his life. He's earning a great salary at his job, and he's also really well taken care of. He's got money in stocks, and there's this whole new thing, which is real estate, and he's doing it living in Barcelona and investing back in Scotland. And I thought to myself, that could be pretty interesting. So afterwards, I left that meeting, and of course, I asked him a whole bunch of other questions, but I started going to Google and I was looking up real estate investing, and I wanted to find out more. And I was reading PDF documents or white papers. I was watching YouTube videos, and I even remember starting to listen into podcasts. Like, that's really what got me started listening to podcasts in the very beginning. And so after I even did all that, then I came across this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I started reading, and I didn't actually get to it, finishing it, until a couple of years later. And by the time I actually finished Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I realized that I was in a point where my children were just born, and I actually wanted to write down my goals. So I stopped and I wrote down a plan, and I said, in the next 5 years, I want to be able to have 10 rental properties, because I wanted that to be a new part of my investment strategy. And I guess that would have been okay, except for the fact of the matter was, like, I had become a father and my kids were getting younger, but I hadn't changed the lifestyle. Like, I was still flying and on planes and stuff like that. And I remember in October of 2012, I remember getting on Lufthansa flight 1152 at 10:30 in the morning, when it was my oldest son's 3rd birthday. And I thought to myself, like, something's wrong here. Like, I don't want to be doing this. Like, it's much more important my son's birthday than getting on a plane and going to a business meeting. And so, it was at that point, like literally in my mind, that I had to change. And my mind told me, like, it's time to actually go and take all this reading and stuff that I've been doing and put it into action. And so that was October 2012. And that goal that I talked about, those 5 properties in those 10 properties in 5 years, I remember less than a year later, in June of 2013, my wife and I were in Cairo, Egypt, and we're closing on our very first property, which happened to be a very small duplex, a multifamily property back in the United States. And that was really what helped me realize that there was a way for me to not only get to my goal of 10 properties in 5 years, I actually did it in 18 months, and a lot faster. But I guess the biggest thing was, I was using the exact same skill set that I built in the multinational, right? To actually go out and build teams, to analyze, to learn quickly, and to be able to actually see the results. Even to the point where my wife was able to quit her job and focus her time on what it is that she really wanted to do. And also, I was happy because she was focusing on family. And I'm getting a chance to spend more and more quality time with my kids, because if I even think, like, the last 3 winters, we've gone and we've skied every single weekend in the winter. When I go into the job, I'm actually going into the job because I want to, because I know that in the daytime, my role is I'm recognized as someone who's achieved and value adder, and outside of the office, a real estate business is going extremely well. So, I mean, it was a really great realization to be able to do that. So not only achieving goals, but also having a lot of extra things that are positive in life. And so I guess I don't really talk about that enough, but I realized that some of you wanted to know, so I thought I would share it here. And I hope that that you've gotten a little bit more insight to me, and also how I got into this thing called long distance multifamily rental real estate investing. So it's me, it's Billy. As you guys always know, this is my 2 cents for today. If you got any questions, let me know. I'd love to hear your comments on what you think as well. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Hasta la próxima.